What is up, guys? So my name's Alex. I used to be a quant trader on Wall Street. I traded index derivatives at Susquehanna. And in this video, I am going to be explaining Theta, which is one of the four main option Greeks, okay? So option Greeks, it may sound confusing. It doesn't relate to Greece. All that option Greeks tell you is how the value of your options change due to external factors like the underlying stock price, the passage of time, as well as the implied volatility of the underlying stock. So in this video, I'm going to focus on Theta. First, I'm going to explain what it means, why it's really important as an options trader. We're going to go through a bunch of examples of different types of trades and how Theta kind of interacts with those trades. And then I'm also going to explain from my time as a quantitative trader on Wall Street, how Theta, like how are professionals, the top hedge funds, using Theta to make profitable trades. Okay, so first of all, what is Theta? If you are long options, then you are short Theta. Theta is always a negative number if you own options. So all it tells you is, assuming everything else stays the same, the stock price, the implied volatility of the stock, how does the value of your option change day after day? So for example, let's say I own a call option that's worth $10. If the Theta is -1, what that means is the value of my option after a day, assuming the stock price and the implied volatility have not changed, the value of my option is going to go down by $1, and now it's going to be worth $9, right? Options have extrinsic value, right? You want the stock to move. If you own options, you want the underlying stock to move. For example, if I buy an out-of-the-money call option on NVIDIA that's expiring in a week, I need the price of NVIDIA to go up, and I only have a week for that stock to go up. Otherwise, my option that I bought becomes completely worthless. So every single day that goes by where NVIDIA stock isn't moving, my option is decreasing in value, and that is quantified by Theta. Okay, so Theta basically tells you how the extrinsic value of your options are comprised of two parts: intrinsic value and extrinsic value. So intrinsic value for an in-the-money option just tells you how much is the value of your option worth if you exercised it today. So for example, if I own a call option and the strike price of that option is 170 and the stock is currently trading at 180, there's $10 in intrinsic value. I could exercise that option, buy the stock at 170, and then sell it for 180 in the market. That $10 is called the intrinsic value of my option. Intrinsic value is either 0 for out-of-the-money options, or it's above 1 for in-the-money options. But again, options are comprised of two parts. There's intrinsic value, which is if you exercise this option today, how much money would you make? And then there's extrinsic value. How much does the remaining time, right, add to the value of your option? So in this video, I'm going to be explaining everything you need to know about Theta. My goal is, with all these different trading videos I'm doing, I want to help people become the best possible options traders they can be. Most people lose money options trading because they don't have the right education. So if you enjoy this type of content, please like the video, please subscribe to the channel. Let me know other video ideas too. I love making trading content. I also make a lot of sports betting content. But without further ado, let's start getting deep into Theta, go through a bunch of examples, and then, again, I'm going to explain how the pros, how hedge funds use Theta to their advantage. So if you're long Theta, you're collecting money every single day that stocks don't move, implied volatility doesn't go up. If you are long Theta, that means you're short options, you are short volatility. So I always say that if you are long Theta, it's very similar to betting the under in a football game, right? You don't want anything to happen. No big plays, no scoring. You just want time to pass, right? You just want minutes to tick by over and over again so you can cash your under. Whereas if you're short Theta, your long options, your long a straddle, you need the stock price to be moving. So it's kind of like betting the over in a football game. So here you can see a table of different thetas, right, and how option price changes. So basically, a simple example is if we have an option that has a premium of $15 and a theta of negative 50 cents after 1 day, assuming the stock price and the implied volatility remain the same, that option is going to be worth $14.50. After 5 days, $12.50. Granted, theta's meant for a day-by-day approximation, and it doesn't really, you can't just multiply it by 30 because theta, as you get closer to expiration, starts to really pick up. So theta's not the exact same number day by day, but that would be a rough approximation for after 5 days, what your option would be worth. Okay, so you can see a bunch of examples here. And one thing I want to be clear about is it's not like literally after 24 hours, that option goes from 15 and it just falls by 15 cents, by 50 cents to 14.50. It's a gradual decay, right? Every minute that goes by that the stock price isn't moving, the implied volatility isn't changing, the value of options is going down and down, second by second, minute by minute, right? So it's not something that literally every morning once the market opens, the options price just drops by 50 cents. But one thing I wanted to make clear is what options have the highest negative theta, right? So if you're long options, at the money options have the highest theta because they have the most to lose, right? At the money options have the highest extrinsic value because it's not clear, are they going to end up in the money and be valuable or out of the money? So at the money options have the highest theta. Options, as they get closer to expiration, right, theta really starts to pick up and dig into the extrinsic value. So theta's really highest for options as you get closer to expiration. You can kind of see a heat map here. And also, theta's highest for options that have higher implied volatility, right? Options that are more expensive. If you have a low volatility stock, the options are going to be cheaper. Versus a high volatility stock, the options are going to be more expensive. That stock is expected to move more. So if you have a higher implied volatility stock and it doesn't move for a day, and the implied volatility doesn't go up, that option is going to decrease in value more than a low volatility stock, right? Because that stock isn't expected to move as much. So the options are going to be cheaper. So theta is highest. You can see the heat map here, but theta is highest for at the money options, right? As you get closer to expiration, and then also stocks or any assets. This doesn't have to be stocks, but assets with higher implied volatilities. Assets that are expected to move more in price, where the options are more expensive, those options are going to have higher thetas. So I figured it would be useful to go through some examples to visualize theta. When I was learning trading, really going through examples of actual trades and actual scenarios, historical examples was extremely valuable. So here's an example where we own an NVIDIA call option, which initially it's in the money, so there's a little bit of intrinsic value. However, as NVIDIA goes out of the money, below the strike price, the intrinsic value goes to zero, and there's extrinsic value that ultimately decays away, right? Extrinsic value by the time we reach expiration is $0, and the option expires worthless. So on the flip side, here's a call option on NVIDIA, strike price 180, an option that ends up in the money. So initially there's intrinsic value, there's extrinsic value. However, as you get closer to expiration, the extrinsic value goes to zero, the time value of the option, right? And basically the option just becomes worth the intrinsic value. So if NVIDIA finishes in this example at about $200, the strike price is 180. The intrinsic value is $20, and the value of our option at expiration is $20. We could buy NVIDIA stock for $180 if we exercise the call, sell it in the market at $200 to make a $20 profit, which is the intrinsic value. Now here you can see an example with a straddle. Okay, so here you can see a straddle, the stock price, right, moving around, and then the intrinsic value and the extrinsic value of our straddle. So initially, right, there's intrinsic value, extrinsic value, but as the stock price goes down, the put is gaining intrinsic value, right? The put is becoming in the money. The put is the option that's gaining value as the call becomes worthless. So you can kind of see what it looks like for a straddle here as extrinsic value goes to zero, and the value of our straddle ultimately becomes worth just what the put would be worth, and that's the intrinsic value of the put. So I'll give you some simple examples of how, really smart hedge funds, sharp hedge funds, when I was a quantitative trader, a market maker at Susquehanna, how they used Theta to their advantage. So basically, during COVID, I was trading index derivatives, which means derivatives on ETFs. So I was trading calls and puts on a bunch of different ETFs, and one of those ETFs was Jets. Okay, so Jets is the airline ETF. American Airlines, United Airlines, all these different stocks make up the index. So basically, during COVID, when everyone thought the world was ending, everybody wanted to buy up volatility in options, right? You saw a lot of retail traders buying put options on airlines, on Jets, even specifically on the ETF, Jets that I was trading. So implied volatility rose, right? Implied volatility just represents how much you think the underlying asset, whether it's a stock or an ETF, how much the underlying asset is going to move. So unsurprisingly, during COVID, when people thought the world was going to end, implied volatility on airlines absolutely surged. So buying options, buying protection, puts or calls on airlines became very expensive. So what you saw a lot of sharp hedge funds do is they would come in at certain periods when implied volatility got too high, and they would sell vol, right? They would sell straddles, they would sell strangles, with basically the bet being airlines. At this point, a lot of information has come out about COVID. Airlines aren't going to change in price much, and we're just going to collect money. We are going to collect the Theta, their long Theta on airlines. We're just going to collect that money every single day and let this decay to zero. And obviously, once the vaccine was released, implied volatility collapsed. These hedge funds made a ton of money due to not only Theta, but also Vega, the collapse in implied volatility. So you see a lot of really smart people, professionals, professional day traders, hedge funds, very sophisticated clients, basically using options as a way to bet on events. If they think implied volatility for a particular stock is too high, right? If earnings is expected to be too volatile and they think earnings is going to be a dud, the stock isn't going to move much, they will sell vol, sell straddles, sell strangles, collect the premium, and then just let that option decay away, ideally to zero. And obviously, they're not right every single time, but these very smart hedge funds are very good at betting on events. It is betting on implied volatility, and where the effect of Theta is going to be much more important than the actual price movement. So when implied volatility for events like earnings or, the election is too high, you will essentially just see massive hedge funds, really smart players in the financial industry betting on events, whether they're buying vol, they think implied volatility is priced too low, or they think it's priced too high for a particular event, and then they just want to collect the Theta and sell options. So regardless, I hope you found this video helpful. We really broke down Theta, which is one of the most important option Greeks. I mean, you really need to know them all inside and out if you want to be a successful options trader. So we went through Theta in this video, but there's tons of other options Greeks that I could go through in other videos. There's Vega, which is how implied volatility affects the price of your option. There's Delta, which is how the price of the underlying asset affects the price of your option. And there's tons of different strategies that you can put on once you understand the Greeks. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for watching. Comment any questions. And again, just thanks so much for your time. And let me know other trading video ideas because I love making content about trading.